Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 94 of the Sports Daily College Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. Joined with me is Mike Koomar. And Mike, March is here, and that means that we've got some automatic bids to be clinched. Now, a couple of these tournaments have started already, but we're going to go ahead through the conferences and pick who we think is going to win them, clinch the auto bid, and then we'll look at some numbers and we'll see where they should shake out in the bracket if they do punch that ticket. So up here, we've got my bracketology spreadsheet, but let's go to ESPN first to show the standings. And Mike, we're going to go in alphabetical order. The Atlantic Sun is up first, and we've got a crowded top of the leaderboard here.
Yeah, so some of these games have already even started right now in the Atlantic Sun. Quarterfinals are almost complete. North Alabama taking down Austin Peay pretty easily. Queens upsetting Florida Gulf Coast. Jacksonville beating Eastern Kentucky, and then Lipscomb looking like they're going to close out Central Arkansas. Look, we've seen some postseason history here, some strong postseason play in the past. Lipscomb back a few years ago made it to the NIT championship game. Florida Gulf Coast, as we all know, made it through the Sweet 16 one year. But this is going to be a pretty interesting conference, Sean. But I'm going to be looking at Lipscomb right now. I think they're playing dominant right now against Central Arkansas. They will not get home court throughout the entirety of it because North Alabama will, but look for Lipscomb to clinch that tournament bid. That's what I'm looking at, Sean.
Yeah, for me, it's between those two, Mike, and they did split the season series with the home team winning both games, so you'd have to think that it'll be a pretty close one. North Alabama gets the one seed. They're the one seed. Lipscomb is on the top here, but North Alabama is the one seed.
Yep.
They'll be hosting the game. I'm going to go with the hosts. I'm going to go with North Alabama to get the victory here. So we've got one Lipscomb, one North Alabama. And as we can see here, Lipscomb was the automatic bid last time I did my exercise. So you see here they're roughly 87 across the resume metrics, 20-9 on the season. They do have a quad 2 win. They look pretty good in quad 3 at 5-3. So, Mike, if Lipscomb does win, you'd have to think that they would be near the top of the automatic bids, whether that's likely a 13. And maybe they could even sneak to a 12 if a couple of those teams lose in their conference tournaments. So Lipscomb will be a team that will have at least a half a chance to win their game in the tournament if they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. You like them. They're currently 83 in the net, like you said. And they're right now actually right around some teams that also could steal bids and get 12 seeds. So that's why you think maybe they could, but I agree, Sean. I think 13-14 line is kind of what you're looking for Lipscomb.
Okay, now let me put in North Alabama. Now, these numbers are a day old. I got them yesterday morning, so obviously some of these teams, especially in the A-Sun, are playing tonight. That is not going to be the case in these numbers, but it's the best we could do under the circumstances. Let's give North Alabama a chance. And
I got them at 114.
114, okay. Sometimes these directional schools aren't exactly how they're spelled out, so let's see. It could be N.O. Alabama. It's not grabbing anything for me here.
Yeah, I got them 114 in Ken Pom.
Okay. Yeah, it's not roughly. I'm looking around NCW. Maybe it's just UNA. Could that be it?
Could be it.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna look at the real net rankings now. On the fly. This is what happens when good old Google Sheets does not come in handy. All right. It's North Alla. Period. Learning this on the fly.
North Alla. There it is.
Okay, so let's go back into the work area. North Alla, period. Okay, there are their numbers. They're a little bit lower. roughly 120 in the 120s. They don't have any wins in the top two quadrants. They still are 20-9. So, Mike, you'd have to think North Alabama would probably be one peg lower than Lipscomb, whether it's a 14, Lipscomb would be a 13, and then maybe they could sneak up to a 13 if enough of those teams lose in their tournaments. So, Sun, it's probably going to be between those two teams, and if it is, it should be a pretty good game considering they split the season series.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And looking at North Alabama, you looked at their out-of-conference schedule. They did have some quality opponents they played. I think probably their best win in that out-of-conference was a good win against Air Force in the opening game of the season. And they also beat East Carolina in December. So look out for North Alabama as they're coming down the stretch here. It's going to be an entertaining Atlantic Sun championship between those two. Is my pick.
All right, let's slide down to the America East. This league has been dominated by one team for years, and it's not that team that has won the regular season title. It's Phil Martelli Jr. and the Bryant Bulldogs who take the regular season crown. But Mike, John Becker and the Vermont Catamounts, 13 in a row. They're just behind in second. They will have to go on the road to win this league. But I cannot get past Vermont here. They've had a ton of injuries this year. They're not as good as they potentially have been over the years. You know, obviously, they gave Duke a really good game last year at the Garden in the round of 64. But I think Bryant is really good. But I just can't get out. I can't get past Vermont here. I'm going with the Catamounts for my automatic bid.
Yeah, the Fighting Doug Eaterts, Bryant coming in, they're winning the regular season. But watch out, Vermont has won 8 straight games, Sean, despite having a tough start to the conference season. So I agree. I'm going to go with the Catamounts as well. They've historically got outstanding success, and they're coming in as the hottest team in the conference. They still got one more game left this season. They'll take on Albany for a chance to get a share of the American East regular season title. I'm not sure how that work out seeding-wise, but right now the Catamounts are hot. I'm going to go with them to get the win.
So let's go back and look head-to-head battles between Vermont. Bryant took their home game, and Vermont took their home game. So then we'd get really in the weeds with the tiebreaker, and it really actually does matter in campus site tournaments.
Yeah, it's huge.
In neutral site, it matters what jersey and what bench you're on. That doesn't really matter as much, but it certainly does here. I'm going to give Vermont the go here. We don't know who's going to host that championship game if those two teams get there, but it is. I'm going to go with Vermont, and Bryant is our automatic qualifier, Mike. So they're in there at 150. It's 17-11 at the time. Now they do have 2 more wins since, or at least one more since this exercise. But them at 150, they're probably looking like something in the 15 seed range, and then we bring Vermont here, and they're actually down in the 220s. So that could be a team that's headed to Dayton or one of the top 16 seeds. But again, I'd be surprised, like the Atlantic Sun, if the American East is anyone else other than these two.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Maine could be a team. They've looked pretty good recently this year. They're just coming off of a loss earlier. But I think this is, like you said, Sean, this is kind of a 2-pony horse race between the Catamounts of Vermont and Bryant.
All right, we're going to scroll down here, Mike, to the American Conference. Now, this is a power conference, but Memphis is an at-large contender. They will get in if they win or lose their conference tournament. But if they lose, this is where potentially the most likely opportunity for a bid steal comes here in the American. We've got North Texas UAB, who's really solid, Florida Atlantic, who's proven at times that they can win some games. So, Mike, if you had to guess now, are you going to take Memphis or the field for the American tournament?
I'm going to take the field. And the reason I'm going to take the field is because I like North Texas to win this game.
Yeah, look, I think so too.
The Dickies Arena is going to be about 40 minutes from Denton, Texas, is the hometown for the Mean Green. So this is going to be close to a home game for them. They've been playing outstanding this year. They've got 5 straight wins. They're 21-6 on the season. They've got 3 losses. They're on their way to getting their 22nd win right now against Wichita State as we're recording. Look, they've had some tough losses this year. They had a tight loss on the road at UAB. That was a 3-point loss. They lost to UTSA at home. That was a little bit of a head scratcher. And they also played Memphis super tight on the road.
And they
Almost
didn't
got the
and they
win
didn't
there.
get him at home either.
No, they did not get a chance to play him at home. This is going to be their chance to play Memphis on close to their home floor, and they've been pretty dominant lately in the conference. Got to give kudos, despite losing Grant McCaslin after that NIT win a couple of years ago. The Mean Green are still out here to play, and I like them to actually win this tournament. And if they win it, I think they're going to get a 12 seed, Sean.
Well, Mike, they're not a whole way off the bubble to begin with.
No,
They're probably in the next 4 out category, and for them to not have the automatic qualifier, they'd have to lose another game, and they won't get an at-large. But they're close enough where if they win the tournament, including a victory against Memphis, I mean, 11 seed is on the table. Especially if these other higher seeds loses, maybe there is room for one AQ to be an 11 seed. Right now we've got VCU, and that's the next conference we're going to go to. But, Mike, I like North Texas also. You'd have to think if it's North Texas-Memphis in the championship game, with North Texas supposed to get a home crowd and Memphis not needing to win the game, I think that North Texas should win that. I also really like Florida Atlantic. They've been playing better ball. They're at 9-7. Maybe they could get an early crack at Memphis if they're the 5 seed, maybe in the semifinals or something like that. And I think UAB could be a problem too. But, Mike, let's go ahead and look. We do not have an American spot here because it's held by Memphis right now. But let's just throw North Texas in here. Their average across the net and the wins against bubble is 56. They're 19-6 on the year. That seems a little low. Maybe they have more games played than that. But
they're 21-6 now.
21-6. So you know what it is?
22-6.
It's the non-Division I games that don't count on the team sheet.
Gotcha.
And that's what the Bryant a couple games ago too. Now there might be one game missing from this. This information's a day old, but still, they do have 4 Q2 wins. They do have a quad 4 loss that was UTSA at home, but I think they're in that 12 seed conversation with a victory. And Mike, they may have lost Grant McCaslin, but they play the exact same way. They're very hard to break down, one of the top defensive teams in the country, and when you're good at defense and you can make some threes, that's sort of how these upsets happen. So we're going with North Texas here in the American.
Absolutely. And you look at how they play specifically in the out-of-conference, and I know we're
they beat
going
Minnesota
back to November. Really early on, they held Minnesota to 51 points, Oregon State to 55 points, and then the NIT season tip-off, they held Northern Iowa to 48 points when they had a 20-point win over them. So, look, a very defensively sound team, and that's one of the reasons I love them going deep into the American tournament and getting into the big dance.
All right, let's move. Let's keep it moving to the Atlantic 10, Mike. Again, a similar situation to the American here. VCU tops the pile at 14-2 and 24-5. They do probably have a case to get in regardless. Now, they'd like to take care of business here, and this game being on Sunday, if VCU can get to that championship game, they'll probably be in either way. You've got George Mason just behind them. And then you have really this 3 through 5 contingent, which has proven at times they could be really good, but also they could lose to anyone. That's Dayton, Loyola, St. Joe's. I don't think it's reasonable to go beyond there for our winner here. But this is a pretty decent top 5. And this tournament is down in D.C. instead of Brooklyn now. So potentially a little bit of an advantage for George Mason rather than, St. Joe's, getting some people from Philly. But, Mike, I think the top 5 in the A-10 is pretty solid. And like the American, I think there's a pretty solid chance for a bid steal here.
Yeah, look out for St. Joe's in this one. This is a team that they struggled out of the gate in the American or the Atlantic 10, with early losses to St. Louis and Duquesne. But they got into the month of February and they got hot after losing on February 1st. They've won 6 of their last 7 games. So they're looking really good right now. I like them to potentially steal one. And we know how talented this team is. They narrowly lost to Texas and they beat a really good Texas Tech team early on in the season. So they've got that quality win. I like St. Joe's to give them a run for their money. I don't know how that seeding is going to work out, if they're going to play VCU in the semis or if they'd end up playing them in the quarters potentially. But look out for them. And I also like George Mason. But right now, I will say I'm going to stick with VCU to win the conference tournament. I think the team that's got the best chance to knock them off, though, is St. Joe's.
Yeah, St. Joe's has some really fun scores. It would be cool to see them in the dance. Eric Reynolds,
Yeah,
the
it
second.
would.
They beat Kentucky last year, and he had a big game. And they have Xavier Brown, who scored a bunch. They have Derek Simpson, the transfer from Rutgers. St. Joe's is fun, and when you look back at their season, you probably expect a few more wins, honestly, especially with how good they looked in against the Texas teams there that you mentioned. But, Mike, I think George Mason has fallen off a little bit.
Yeah.
They were probably actually in good shape to get in at large a couple weeks ago, but a couple bad losses. But it's the team in third place on our ESPN standings here that I'm picking to win, and that is the Dayton Flyers. They go to Maui. They do leave 1-2, but they did beat UConn, and they're playing some better ball right now. And all of a sudden, they're 20-9. They had a nice 2 overtime win against Richmond. And, you look at their roster, and again, like St. Joe's, they should have had more wins. They had, Nate Santos, Enoch Cheeks, Malachi Smith, Zed Key, Posh Alexander. These are some pretty big names that the average college basketball fan would probably remember from their previous spots. So Dayton, I think, other than VCU, is probably playing the best ball going in. Now, they do get to go on the road to VCU, so potentially they could get the win there. And Mike, at 20-9, they are probably like in the North Texas range when it comes to an at-large. You might see them on a couple next 4 out ranges. Obviously, it's probably not reasonable for them to get one, but they're pretty close to an at-large. And if they do get this AQ, they could end up on that 12 line.
Yeah, and Loyola and Dayton also schools. Yeah. I didn't really get to mention, like you said, Dayton is a great program. Had a good start to that season in Maui, despite losing 2 games. When I look at the Atlantic 10, you don't see more than 2 bids, and the only reason you get 2 bids is if VCU does not win the conference title, but they get to the semifinals or championship game. But with that being said, I see 5 Atlantic 10 teams that can win a game in March. Absolutely. All of them have the capabilities to do it. Even George Mason, despite their struggles of late, they have a really good shot. So look out for the Atlantic 10 in March. If they can get a couple teams in. Look, I think that Dayton and Loyola could absolutely get to the Sweet 16 even. They just can catch fire. I do like the Atlantic 10 a lot.
Yeah, so I'm going through some of the A10 teams here, Mike. VCU is at 33 across the resume metrics, 7-4 across the top 2 quadrants. For me, if they win, their floor is an 11 seed if they win the automatic bid, and that's probably why they get in anyway. But you look at George Mason and Dayton, pretty similar resumes in the mid-70s. George Mason is 4-4 across the top 2 quadrants. They do have a 2 quad 3 and quad 4, which probably brings them down to a 13. But Dayton, a little better, 5-8 across the top 2 quadrants with just 1 loss outside. But again, Mike, especially if these 4 or 5 seeds come in not looking so great, they maybe take a couple lumps in their conference tournament, the Atlantic 10 winner can definitely get hot and win 2 games. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
All right, so let's keep moving here because we do have a ton of conferences to get to. ACC, that's for another video later in the week. Big 12, same thing. Big East, same thing. All right, we're going to the Big Sky. Northern Colorado and Montana tie for the regular season title. And, Mike, we just have 2 other teams over 500 in this league, Portland State and Idaho State. Seems like a 2-horse race here. I've had Montana and Northern Colorado as my automatic qualifier over the last couple weeks, and there's not a ton separating them. Northern Colorado probably a seed line higher at this point. But, Mike, this championship game is on late, and if it's between Northern Colorado and Montana, we're going to have ourselves a good ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some high seed magic here in the Big Sky in the past. Look, there's still a couple games left in the regular season. Actually, no, they're just finishing up the regular season right now. But um, I do like Northern Colorado in this one. They've been really explosive this year, able to get a lot of points, but also playing really solid defense. They've had some tight games. They lost to Colorado, the Buffaloes, in double overtime this year by just 2 points. That was an early game that they almost got. Also got some good experience playing on the road at Texas Tech. So I really like Northern Colorado in this one. I think you're probably looking at about a 14, 15 seed for them if they can get in.
Yep.
Probably similar-ish for Montana, but I do like the Northern Colorado Bears.
So this is a little bit of an interesting series this year, Mike, between the top two teams. The road team won in this Montana Northern Colorado series both times
Yeah,
by pretty significant margins both times. Now, this is not a campus sites league. This tournament is somewhere in the Big Sky, Boise, Idaho, I think. So not sure that's really an advantage for either Northern Colorado or Montana. As you go down the list, of course, you get the Idaho State Bengals in Idaho, and probably Eastern Washington too. Maybe get some fans in there, but Mike, this anyone else other than the top two win, they'll be headed to Dayton. But I would just give Northern Colorado the slight edge at this point. Now the title's not over yet, so they haven't split it yet, but they do both play tonight. So if they do both win or both lose, they'll split the title, and potentially we'll see round three in Boise in a week. But Mike, I don't think there's much other than these two teams here in the Big Sky.
that's really all we got. Go Bears.
All right, let's slide down to the Big South Conference. We've got the High Point Panthers up at the top, 28-5 on the season and 14-2 in the league. You've got Winthrop, UNC Asheville, and Radford coming close behind. But Mike, it would be a big surprise if High Point does not win this league.
Absolutely. High Point, they've been metric darlings this year. They've gotten a lot of recognition, and they've won 11 straight games in this one. So they've been really impressive. You got to like them to go the distance. Winthrop, they're a good program. They've got a lot of history, but High Point already has their quarterfinal date with Destiny. Unsure who they're going to play, but with that conference regular season already wrapped up, they'll be awaiting their victim in the quarterfinals.
And this tournament is in Johnson City, Tennessee. So it is a neutral game. We've got USC Upstate and Gardner Webb, and the winner of that game will take on High Point. But Mike, High Point's in the realm of one of the top 13 seeds. So somebody goes down, they could be on the 12 line, and offensively is where they do their damage. Let's head over to KenPom for a second. And High Point sits here at 88th, which is pretty solid. You go look at their offensive number there, though. That is a 25 next to their name offensively. 224 in defense. So we're not exactly sure. This isn't really the profile for 12, 13 seeds that upset teams. They're usually good defensive teams that hit a couple threes. But I'm not sure we've really seen a mid-major with this sort of profile that off the top of my head that I can remember. But it would be interesting to see them in the dance, that's for sure.
Oakland last year was kind of big 3-point shooting team.
They were pretty solid defensively though too.
They were, yes, that is true.
With Trey Towns,
but
and yeah,
you have looked at some of their early out of conference games where they held teams to not a lot of points. Look, they beat UAB by 3 points, allowing just 65 in that game. They also knocked off North Texas. How we talked about how we love them. Allowed 71 against North Texas in a 5-point victory. They also beat App State by 6 in the out of conference. So they have the ability to shut down defenses, but like you said, they're going to have to win in the big dance by making some threes.
Yeah, if you remember, Kansas legend Bobby Pettiford is on this High Point team. He played at East Carolina last year, and he averages 8.5 off the bench for the Panthers. But I would like to see High Point win. I think They are certainly the best team in the Big South, and this is really the first league that we've got to, Mike, this team is definitely the best in the league, and let's hope to see them win. All right, Big West. UC San Diego is in there right now. They're all the way up to 35th in Ken Palm. They're 16-2, 26-4. If they lose, Mike, potential at large for them as well. UC Irvine is a good team as well, in second at 25-5 and 15-3. But Mike, there at least appears to be a chance that we have a two-bid Big West.
Yeah, this conference just announced is going to get a little bit bigger next year. They're going to get Cal Baptist and Utah Valley. For those of y'all who remember, Utah Valley a couple years ago made a run through the NIT
with Mark Pope at the helm.
Absolutely. But UC San Diego, they're clearly the runaway favorites right now, just because of how good of a record. As you said, Sean, 33rd in Ken Palm right now.
Oh wow, so it went up. Okay.
Yeah. But look out for the UC Irvine Anteaters in this one. They're 15-3, 26-5 or 25-5, excuse me, overall. And they've played some good competition in the out of conference. Not gotten any really big wins, but look out for them. I believe they beat UC San Diego.
I think the road teams won that series because they both got a quad one win, and I'm assuming that's what it is. Let's see here.
On the road. So that's their signature win so far this year. Watch out for them. This is a good offensive team. Not great defensive metrics as well, but they do score the ball in bunches.
Yeah, 14th in defense, actually, Mike. So they're the opposite of High Point. They're 208 in offense, 14th in defense. They played a pretty fast tempo too, 107. You don't really see that a whole lot, but again, I would like to see them play round 3. The road teams won. UC Irvine is 63rd across the metrics and 4-2 in the top 2 quads with 3 losses in quad 3. I don't think UC Irvine could get an at-large, but I do think UC San Diego could with their record 4-2 across the top 2 quadrants and 10-3 across the top 3, now 14-1 in quad 4. So it will be interesting to see what the committee does with the Tritons if they do not win their tournament. All right, Conference USA. We've got, this is a little bit of a different order than the one I have it on the Excel, but Coastal Athletic Association. We've got Towson at the top of the pile at 16-2, UNC Wilmington at 14-4. We've got not Pac Kelsey, his former team, Chris Mack's Charleston Cougars at 13-5. Then we're getting into the middle of the pack here. William Mary, Campbell, Monmouth, Drexel. But Mike, Towson is pretty good, and Charleston is looking pretty good at that third spot too. So a lot to play for here in the Coastal Tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the favorite, the Towson Tigers. Look, they're 16-2 in regular season or in conference play. They had a tough start to the conference season. Had a couple of big blowouts
4-8
against
in the non-con.
Exactly. Not impressive, but when you got to conference, they seemed to find their footing. They did lose recently. They lost their second game a couple weeks ago to Elon. That was a little bit of a head scratcher, but since then they've taken care of business against Campbell, the William & Mary, and Hampton University. So they're going to get that top seed in the CAA, and they will await their next captor in the quarterfinals. But I really like Towson.
Yep. I can't get Charleston here. There's a little bit of a difficulty with their... I think it's either them or Towson, and Towson is certainly playing the best out of anybody. To go 16-2 to league, you got to know what you're doing. And they have proven that they're a little bit better than the good teams in that league, so I'm going with Towson as well. All right, into the Horizon League, Mike. Regular season champions. Actually, this is out of order, but we're going to go with it. Robert Morris at 15-4, Milwaukee Cleveland State at 14-6, the Penguins of Youngstown State at 13-7, the Mastodons of Purdue Fort Wayne at 12-8, Northern Kentucky and Oakland at 11-9. Mike, to me, the Horizon League is probably the most wide open conference tournament.
Yeah, I was going to say look out for the Northern Kentucky Norse. They're going to be very much in the middle of the pack of this one. They've actually got to play a first round game against Detroit Mercy. They do not have a first round bye, but I like them to build confidence. They've won 4 straight ball games. Um, Look, I agree, Sean. This is a wide open field. I think you also look at Wisconsin Milwaukee. That's a team that way back in the day, they made a run deep through March Madness, and they've been playing pretty good basketball. Look, the top seed, Robert Morris, they've won 7 straight games. They're looking like the best team, but you could go with any of these teams in the top 6, and I think they've got a legitimate chance to go dancing.
I think outside of the Fighting Doug Gottliebs, who are in last place, I think it's anybody's game, really. I mean, I could see 7 or 8 teams winning this league. I'm going with Cleveland State. I think they've done an excellent job over the past couple of years since Dennis Gates went to Missouri. And they were in the lead for most of this season. They end up not winning it, but we've got Robert Morris at 152. They're probably looking at a 15 seed, maybe a 14. And then Cleveland State's just a little bit behind at 176. So, again, they're looking at a 15, maybe even one of the top 16 seeds. So the Horizon League wide open. They do campus sites early on, and then the Final Four it does rotate. It was at Detroit last year. I believe it's in Indianapolis this year. So
Indianapolis.
at the Farmers Coliseum there in Indy. But Horizon League should be a good one. All right, let's go
Think
back
that Gottlieb gets fired at the end of the year?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I hope so.
Conference USA. We're going to go back for a second. We did skip them. We've got Jacksonville State, who is leading right now. There's still some more games, but Liberty, Middle Tennessee, just behind. Both of those teams have had some March success in the past. But, Mike, Jacksonville State might be the number 1 seed here, but Liberty is by far, in my opinion, the best team in this league at 23-6, and they're going to get a 12 seed or better if they get in at 66 in the metrics. But Richie McKay and the Liberty Flames haven't quite had the success in conference tournaments that they probably hoped over the last couple of years. I think this is the one where they get over the hump.
Yeah, I like that. Look, Liberty had a good start when they were in the out of conference. They got probably their signature win over Kansas State en route to a Paradise Jam championship in that MTE. But since then, Liberty they've been struggling a little bit in the conference. They've lost 5 games. I don't think that was expected going into this season, but I do agree, Sean. I like them to kind of run the table. They haven't played as many games as Jacksonville State, so they haven't had a chance to grab exactly. They still got a chance to grab that number 1 overall seed in Conference USA, but I like the Flames as well coming into the conference tournament.
They do finish the season Middle Tennessee on the road and Western Kentucky on the road, so I think there's a chance they actually fall to the 3 seed. Now, that doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, 2 versus 3 doesn't mean a whole lot. You still get to avoid the 1 seed until the finals, but I would not be surprised if they do fall to the 3rd seed. And this tournament is going to be in Huntsville, Alabama, so it is a
beautiful city,
neutral site. All right, we did the Horizon League already. Let's go to the Ivy League. They've still got 1 more game also, maybe even 2, but still, they do only a semifinals and a finals. The top 4 qualify for the tournament. It's Yale, atop of the pile here. Despite losing Danny Wolf, despite losing Matt Noling, James Jones and the Bulldogs are still the top of the league. They did pull off quite an upset last year against Auburn. Mike, with just 1 loss in the conference, you'd have to think that they're likely to win this league again.
Yeah, Yale's currently undefeated at home going into the last game of the season, which is going to be on the road. So an undefeated season at home for Yale is really impressive. You got to think that they are the clear-cut favorites in the Ivy League. Still one more team that has not clinched in the Ivy League semifinals. So Princeton is the 4th team, but they can still cough up that 4th spot to either Harvard or Brown. With that being said, though, yeah, I like Yale a lot. 19-7 overall. They've played pretty well in some of these out-of-conference games. They really hung with Purdue early on in the season. Barely lost to Minnesota.
They should have won that game, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They gave that one away. and then they hung with a good Rhode Island team. So I really like Yale to get the job done.
And this tournament is at Brown University, whether they make it or not, in Providence, Rhode Island. They just seem to pick one of the teams to host every year. Last year,
Just
Columbia.
do a random, yeah.
It's been Princeton a bunch, but it is in Rhode Island this year. And Yale did beat Brown in the championship game last year, so Brown needs to win to get in, and that would likely mean another game against Yale in the conference tournament. So maybe it's not so fast for Yale, but Mike, I agree. This is definitely Yale's to lose, and they're looking in the mid-70s. 18-7 overall. They're probably a 13 if all the teams win, but they're probably the first to jump up to a 12.
Yeah, I
all
agree.
Right.
Good chance to steal one as a 12-5 game.
Let's head over to my old neck of the woods, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. We've got Quinnipiac at the top of the league at 14-4, Marist close behind at 13-5, and Merrimack close behind them at 13-6. This tournament is down in Atlantic City in New Jersey, and only the top 10 make it, so the bottom 3 get dropped off. And Mike, really, it's been the key in this league all year is that there are 3 teams at the top: Quinnipiac, Marist, and Merrimack. I've watched all of them play a couple times, and I don't really think I'm certainly taking them 3 over the field, and it really is just flipping a coin between those 3.
Yeah, Sean, I'm going to trust your gut on this one. So I want you to tell us who you think is going to win your former conference.
This is a tough one. All 3 of them are pretty good teams, I think, that can probably avoid Dayton and get a regular 16 seed. I'm going to go with Merrimack. I think they're the most fun to watch in the league. They play sort of this, they call it the amoeba 3-2 zone, and if you can shoot over the top of it, you're going to win by a lot. But if you can't, trouble, you could face some trouble. So Marist is good. They grind you down. They play you really slow. They might be able to hang with a team that isn't shooting it well. And then Quinnipiac is just an all-around good team. They don't do anything great, but they don't do anything poorly either. So I'm going to go with Merrimack in their first year in the conference and their first year eligible for the NCAA tournament. But other than that, if it's anyone else other than those 3, I'll be really surprised.
Yeah, you look at Marist; they've actually really struggled coming down the stretch of the season.
They lost to St. Peter's at home yesterday.
And they lost to Sacred Heart in the game before that. So 2 straight losses for them. I think about a week and a half ago, you probably would have said that the Red Foxes are the clear-cut favorites in this, but they've struggled. And you know what, Sean? You're going Merrimack, so I'm going to ride with Merrimack because you know this better than anyone else.
All right, Merrimack. I do think these teams will avoid Dayton, but it's likely a Merrimack at 200, Quinnipiac at 184, that they'll likely be a 16 seed. And what an interesting odd scout that would be for Alabama or a Tennessee to play Merrimack. Look, 99 times out of 100, they'd beat him by 30, but a couple shots don't go in. You've never seen a zone like this before, and who knows what can happen. All right, let's go to the other MAC, the Mid-American Conference. Over to the Midwest a little bit, and former Illinois coach John Gross and his Akron Zips are on top of this league, 15-1 in the league, 23-6. We've got Travis Steele and the Miami, Ohio Redhawks just behind at 12-4, and then we're getting into the weeds here in the middle of the pack, Mike. But John Gross's team has been impressive this year, especially in conference play, and I think it would be surprising if they don't win this conference tournament.
Yeah,
Did we lose you, Mike?
My basketball coach, John Gross.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
I was saying, John Gross, you could either call him the king of the MAC because he's won the MAC conference a lot with several different teams, or you call him the failed coach at Illinois. Either way, he's been very successful in the Mid-America. It's surprising when you look at the record. 15-1 conference, 23-6 overall, but they had a couple of bad losses early on in the out of conference play, which has hurt their metric. And their one golden opportunity to get a big win against St. Mary's, they flopped. They lost by 21. So I like Akron. They've got a real good chance. It seems like to get something done and get to March. Probably no better than the 13 seed though. When you look at where they are in the metrics, they may even slip down to a 14.
Yeah, I think 14 is probably the most likely scenario. Maybe they backdoor their way into the final 13 or something like that. But yeah, them as a 14 seed is a little interesting because they're still a top 100 team, and they do have sort of they're kind of solid at everything. They play at an incredibly fast tempo, 12th in the country, but potentially, they are definitely my team to look out for, especially if they get Kentucky. It seems like that they might be the team that can do that. All right, let's go to the MEAC now, Mike. The Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. We've got Norfolk State on the top of the pile here, and then South Carolina State, Delaware State, Howard. The Spartans of Norfolk State, Mike, they are certainly no strangers to big moments in March. And I think in this league, they're significantly better than the rest of the teams. So if you had to give me Norfolk State or the field, I'm taking Norfolk State.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking Norfolk State as well. No stranger to success in March after that win over Missouri back in 2011. But I would agree, Sean. I think it's all about Norfolk State.
And they're significantly higher than they usually are. They're usually in the 200s. They're up to 181 now.
Yeah.
So potentially we could see them in the 15 seed range, which is, of course, where they were when they pulled off that big win. But I know they've been in Dayton a couple times over the years and just a regular 16 seed too. But be shocked to see anybody else come out of the MEAC. And if they do, they're headed to Dayton, that's for sure. All right, the Missouri Valley up next. Another interesting one, Mike. We had a couple early, and now here we have the Missouri Valley. Drake at 27-3 overall, 17-3 in the conference. Go back to the Charleston Classic all the way back in Feast Week. It was them who won it. They pulled off some wins over some tournament teams, including Vanderbilt. Potential at-large opportunity for Drake. And there's a couple good teams behind them. Bradley, Northern Iowa, Belmont. All could see them winning this league. And, Mike, if you're on the bubble, you're rooting for Drake big time here because they have a chance to get in as an at-large as well. But Drake's really good. I think Bradley's pretty good too. And this will be the first bid that's clinched. We had a great game between Indiana State and Drake last year. And Ben McCollum is going to get a good seed if he wins this league. And he's probably going to get in either way.
Yeah, I really like Drake. I think, you look out for them even on the one of the first championship games that we get to watch. It's always so entertaining. So, you never know. I think Northern Iowa or Bradley could always pull off an upset and make things a little funky for us. But looked at how good Drake was in the out-of-conference. They got some big wins. So I like the Bulldogs to get the job done and get a pretty good seed and a good chance to pick off a game in March.
They are a contender for a better seed than the typical AQs. If you remember last year, they got pushed all the way up to a 10 seed.
Yeah.
I think an 11 seed is possible this year. And then, Mike, if they lose, I think they're definitely headed to Dayton for the first four. We've seen these ridiculously good mid-major teams thrown there before. We were hoping to see that with Indiana State last year as Drake did win this, but we didn't. And then Indiana State goes on to the NIT championship game where they lose to Seton Hall. But Missouri Valley's really good. It's great that it's the first tournament. The final's on CBS. It is really cool. Just 6 days from now is the first bid. And for bubble teams' hopes, Mike, both of our teams are on the bubble right now. Let's go, Drake.
Yes, please. Please, Drake. Make this easy on me.
All right, let's head to the NEC. The Mountain West is going to have multiple bids, so we'll leave that alone for now. The Northeast Conference. Mike, this is a little bit of an interesting one as many of these teams are ineligible for the NCAA tournament, but in this conference, they still can play in the conference tournament and win it. We saw it 2 years ago when Fairleigh Dickinson lost in the championship game, but still got the automatic bid, still went to Dayton, won that game, and then ended up beating Purdue. So Lemoyne is not eligible for the postseason. Stonehill is not eligible for the postseason beyond this. And Mercyhurst is not eligible either for the NCAA tournament. So Patrick Sellers and Central Connecticut lead the pile. We've got LIU just a couple games behind, and then a bunch of teams here in the middle. Mike, Central Connecticut is really on the up as a program, and they certainly are the front runners to win this league.
Yeah, the clear-cut favorites in this one. They've won 12 consecutive games. That's a long time to not lose a basketball game. So really impressive stuff. I think you got to say that they're the runaway favorites in this one. They've got Lemoyne on Wednesday to start their chance to win an auto bid. Now, I don't think you get to see Central Connecticut get better than a 15. They've got a good record, but their quality of wins is not very good.
I think they should stay out of the first four, but they're likely headed for a 15 or a 16. Wagner is a team to look out for here for me, Mike. That they're 14 and 15, 6 and 10. They've won this league a couple times over the years. With how tight this league is, and this is a campus sites league, so it will be tough for them to win a bunch of games on the road. But we have seen some upsets here in the past. Central was the front runner last year. They lost at home in the semifinals, but I'm hoping Central wins. I think it's a great story. Their program, Patrick Sellers was a player there for many years. Tons of assistant coaching stops. Spent a couple years up at Fairfield while I was there. So wishing him the best, and I hope that the Blue Devils from New Britain can get the job done there. All right, let's go to Ohio Valley Conference, the OVC. Their tournament's in Evansville, Indiana. And we've got SEMO, Southeast Missouri State Redhawks at the top of the league. SIU, Edwardsville, Tennessee State, Little Rock, Tennessee Tech, and into the middle of the pack we go. Mike, this is another one that, like the Horizon League, I could see 6 or 7 teams winning this.
Yeah, this is a pretty evenly matched conference. Remember, Sean, back in the day, this conference used to be dominated by 2 teams, Belmont and Murray State. Both teams have left the Ohio Valley Conference.
So this is actually the first bid clinch, not Arch Madness.
Yes, on Saturday. Yep.
But, I mean, it's the day after, but still. I could see this going a bunch of different ways, Mike.
Yeah, I like Little Rock, actually. I think they're going to get the job done. We've seen them in March a few times before. Yeah, they did just lose to SIU Edwardsville. But with that being said, they've got a pretty good resume. They've got some tournament experience. I'm going to go with Little Rock to get the job done and grab a 16 seed.
Yeah, it seems likely that the winner of this league will get a 16. If it is SEMO, maybe they get out of Dayton, but it is pretty likely that this winner will be going to the first 4. Mike, the way it's set up is that the 1 and 2 seeds get a bid all the way, or bye all the way to the semifinals. We've seen a couple of weird brackets, like the WCC, which we haven't gotten to yet, like the Atlantic Sun, which has already started, where, I mean, you have a chance if you're in the tournament, but you get a bye to the semis if you're one of the top 2 teams. The regular season should matter, and unfortunately it just doesn't in mid-major leagues as much as it should, but it seems like it's starting to with a couple of these leagues. I know the WCC has done this for a while, but I'm not sure about these other 2 conferences. But, Mike, after seeing this, I think it's really hard to go past the top 2 teams. But I'm going with SIUE.
You're going with SIUE?
Yep.
I like it. I'm sticking with Little Rock.
They just have to play 1 extra game. It's not quite as crazy as a team that's playing on a Wednesday, surviving until Saturday against a team that hasn't played each day.
That hasn't played at all.
But, all right, let's go down to the Patriot League. I believe this one is campus sites also.
It is, yes.
We've got American at the top of the league. This is another one that's really, really hotly contested. American and Bucknell tied for the league at 13 and 5. Then 4 teams at 10 and 8: Colgate, Navy, Army, and Boston U. And then after that, you've got Lafayette, Loyola, Lehigh, and Holy Cross. But, Mike, I think that really the top 6 teams all could see themselves winning this league.
Yeah, it's a deep league. I think, going into the last 2 weeks of the season, it felt pretty clearly that American was the clear cut favorite. But then again, Americans started to lose some games that we didn't expect them to. They lost to Army, they lost to Navy, and then at the same time, Bucknell they've now won 6 straight games after losing to Army earlier on in this season. They've gone on a tear since then that involved a 30-point win over the Black Knights later on, and a half-court shot made by A-Rod at halftime of that game. I don't know what A-Rod's doing in Bucknell, but he's doing his thing, I guess. So I think Bucknell's got to be the clear-cut favorites, even though they're on the 2 line here. But Sean, this is one of my favorite tournaments to watch every year. I've got a lot of family ties in the Patriot League and have seen a lot of games at Lehigh over the years. But with that being said, there is one historical college basketball team that has never been to the big dance. And I think they're going to do it this year. It's going to be the Army Black Knights, Sean. They're a little bit on the downturn. They've lost 3 straight games going into here. Kind of fell apart. Looked like they had a chance to compete for a regular season title. But I think the Army Black Knights are going to get the job done. They're going to have to go travel to Colgate in the first round in the quarterfinals. But I like them to get there, get hot, and then knock off American on their way to a Patriot League title.
That would be really cool, Mike. It is cool also that this is not the Colgate Invitational this year.
It is not.
Colgate still could win this league, but it wasn't really a contest over the years. Colgate was by far and ahead better than the rest of this league with Matt Langle up there in upstate New York. Bucknell's certainly the hot team coming in, and the military schools have been very inconsistent. I just don't know if you can win a couple road games in a row doing that. I'm going to go with Bucknell. I'm going to ride the hot hand. And regardless of who wins this league, Mike, it is pretty clear that this winner is going to be going to Dayton, which from a certain point of view is you've got a much better chance to win a game that way, and you get a significantly larger group of people watching you probably than in the 116 game in the mishmash on Thursday or Friday. But yeah, this is a cool one. As much as campus sites games aren't really fair,
they're a lot of fun to watch.
They are fun to watch because too many mid-major leagues do neutral tournaments.
I agree.
There's just too many empty seats in some of these. Now there are a couple that the big conferences, Arch Madness, of course, and there are plenty that deserve a neutral court, but watching these campus sites with a bid on the line is something else. It is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'll compare the MAAC to the Patriot.
No business doing the tournament in a neutral site. No business.
They get 500 people, maybe 500 people to go to a game. Maybe. Sometimes it's 250, sometimes it's 100 people. You go to the Patriot League, and every single tournament game is sold out. It's packed. Students are showing up. It's rowdy. It's such a fun environment. I've been to a lot of postseason Patriot League games, and I can tell you I've had a blast at every single one of them. Crowds are always into it. It's a great tournament to watch.
And going back to the MAC for a second, a lot of the teams have decent attendance rates in their own arena. Fairfield's usually around 2,500. Most of the other teams are around 1,500. But yeah, I mean, they're playing in a 10,000 seat arena down there in Boardwalk Hall, which is used for a lot of concerts. And again, there is, we got tickets for like $10 to the championship game last year there. They are giving those things away. So, yeah.
And you understand with Conference USA, you got to have one neutral site to do it because you've got teams coming in from everywhere around. Yeah. But you look at the MAAC, all those guys are in a general vicinity, right?
You give 2-3 days in between games, easily
very
done.
Doable.
It's 10. It's a 10-team tournament. You could even go to 8 if you really want to.
Yeah, you might have some trouble with some of those upstate New York teams like Niagara and Canisius, but at the end of the day, that's still not that terrible of a commute down to go to Ryder or to go to Manhattan. So
it's still a drive.
Yeah, exactly. It's a drive, but you're still driving.
It's not a plane.
Exactly.
That is. I feel like we've brought this up a couple times over the years, and it's still true. So
yeah.
All right, the SEC. They might have a couple bids in there, so we'll leave that one alone. Now let's go to the Southern Conference, the SoCon. as it's commonly referred to as. We've got Chattanooga, UNC, Greensboro, East Tennessee State, Samford, Furman. A couple teams in there have had some March success over the years. But, Mike, Chattanooga, Samford, Furman, any of those three I'd like to win, and you could even talk me into any of the top 5 winning this conference tournament.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly that the Citadel will not win. They're 0-18, 5-24 going into this.
It would be cool if they win their first round game, though.
Yeah. Not that I don't support the troops down there in Charleston, but I don't think that the Citadel is going to get stuff done. With that being said, Chattanooga, they do have tournament experience. They've played well. They played pretty well against Illinois last year, if I recall, Sean.
Was it 2 years ago?
And a couple years ago.
Samford
that's right.
Won last year, yeah.
Yeah, they actually almost beat the Illini. It was in 2023
it may have been 3 years ago, actually, because
it was 3 years ago.
Beat Virginia, and then Samford played Kansas really close last year. But, Mike, regardless, those 3 teams have all competed. Only one of them won, but the winner of this league is something to look out for.
It is. Chattanooga's got a little bit of a questionable eye-raising result recently. Last Saturday, they only beat the Citadel by 1 at home. And like we said, Citadel really bad this year. But with that being said, I do like Chattanooga to go up there and get the job done. They are going to be the top seeds. They've been the best team all year round. Now, what kind of seed they get, I don't think it'll be all that good. They'll probably look around the 14-15 line. But at the end of the day, I think the Mocs get the job done.
Yeah, they're 1-14, 4-1 in quad 2. 14 maybe harsh 15, but they're certainly the leaders. This tournament is in Asheville, North Carolina, so potentially a little bit of a boost for UNC Greensboro. Chattanooga is in Tennessee. Not exactly sure how far they are, but it can't be that far.
Close.
Furman in South Carolina, close. Samford in Alabama, Wofford in South Carolina, I believe. So I'm going to go with Bucky Ball and Samford. I don't think Bucky McMillan is going to be their coach next year, so potentially he gets he brings Samford to back-to-back dances on the way out. But should be another good one. This has had some really good championship games over the years. Furman had a buzzer beater, and then ultimately it was Chattanooga who hit the buzzer beater over Furman. Chattanooga goes to play Illinois, and then Furman wins the next year over Chattanooga again, and then Furman beats Virginia in the round of 64. So this is, a really cool one. All right, let's go down south to the Southland. We've got a bunch of Texas teams, Louisiana teams in this league. But, Mike, there's really only one team that I think we should talk about here, and that is Will Wade and the McNeese Cowboys, 19-1 in the league, 25-6. An at-large bid might not be on the cards for Will Wade, but certainly this team is going to be a problem if they get into the tournament.
Yeah, Will Wade continues to have his comeback as a coach after resigning in disgrace from LSU right before the tournament. They've also, Sean, if I'm not mistaken, done pretty well in the metrics.
They're very high.
Will Wade's squad is currently at 59th right now in KenPom. Not as good as they were last year in the metrics, but with that being said, they won 19 to 20 games in conference. That's really impressive. They've also had some couple of good wins in the out-of-conference. Sean, I could see them getting a 12 seed. They obviously, I don't think they're going to get an at-large, but they look really good right now. And I think they're the clear-cut favorites to win this conference.
I don't think they could get one of the 11s that a Drake or VCU could get, but I think they're right there. They really did challenge themselves in the non-con. They played South Dakota State in the Field of 68 showcase. They went on the road to Alabama and lost by 8. They beat North Texas. They came in second at the Paradise Jam to Liberty. They played Santa Clara, who's pretty close. They were awfully close against Mississippi State.
Yeah, going to be Mississippi State.
These are some really, really close results that they weren't able to get that huge win to potentially get them over the at-large hump, but they've rolled through this conference, Mike. Just one loss to Nichols on the road, and a couple of their players were out for that one, but they've still got a couple of their power conference transfers in there. They've got Brandon Murray, Quadir Copeland, Christian Shoemate. These guys can battle in a 5-12 game, and I really hope that they win this league because, honestly, the Southland Conference deserves to have them in the tournament.
I agree.
All right, we've got 3 left, Mike. Omaha leads the Summit League. And this has been one that's been dominated by the Dakota schools and Oral Roberts over the years, but it's Nebraska at Omaha, the Omaha Mavericks, 13-3 overall, 19-12. You've got St. Thomas from Minnesota, 12-4. Let me double check. I'm not entirely sure that they're
I don't know if they're eligible for the tournament.
Yeah, let me look real quick. They haven't been over the years. I know that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, so they are not eligible this year.
Sad.
But still, this should still be a good league. You've got the Jackrabbits. You've got North Dakota State. You've got North Dakota all the way down there, 5-11. Remember, they took Alabama to the brink. But Omaha is really cool. They kind of just beat the crap out of a trash can after every win, and it is pretty funny. So hopefully for them, they keep doing that. You've got South Dakota State. They've won a ton of games over the years. This is, again, Mike, the Summit League has been competitive over the years, and really it's just missing Oral Roberts from being a really good conference tournament.
It really is. Yeah, it's a bummer that Oral Roberts is having an off year. I really like, Sean, right now, that the 2-3 game is going to be St. Thomas against South Dakota State. I think the winner of that game is going to win the conference title. Now, St. Thomas, they can't play in the Big Dance, so the winner of that game would, despite if they won it, would go to the other team that they play in the championship. But I like South Dakota State to win this. They've had a lot of history playing well coming down the stretch, and they played pretty well in the month of February. Their only losses coming against North Dakota State. They beat Omaha at home during this time as well. So they had a tough loss recently against Denver, but I think that was kind of a one-off loss. I really like them to keep the momentum going.
This is one, Mike, where I think there is going to be some carnage. I think St. Thomas wins the Summit League tournament.
Yeah.
And
winner South Dakota State in St. Thomas for me. Yeah.
I think that Omaha now I'm not entirely sure here that it's just the runner-up in the championship game. It could be the regular season champ. But I think either way it's Omaha that goes to the tournament. But that would be cool. Again, it would bring up, remember when it happened with Jacksonville and Jacksonville State a couple years ago with Bellarmine winning the tournament?
Yeah.
And it was the team that won the regular season title that got to go. But in the NEC 2 years ago, Fairleigh Dickinson lost in the championship game, and it was them who went, and obviously they beat Purdue. But again, I would love to see that conversation come up again because don't let them play in the conference tournament if they can't get the automatic bid.
I agree. What's the point?
Yep. And maybe bring the ineligible years down to 1 or 2 rather than 3 or 4.
Yeah, we've seen it a few times now. It just doesn't make sense. If you're good enough to compete at the Division I level, you're good enough to compete at March Madness. That's the way I see it.
All right, we've got 2 left, Mike. The Sun Belt and the WAC, the West Coast Conference multi-bid. But Sun Belt, South Alabama leads the way. And how about this, Mike? 4 different teams shared this regular season title. You don't see this very often. South Alabama, James Madison, Arkansas State, and Troy all get to hang a banner for a regular season title.
Yeah.
And we've had 3 of these 4 in the lead at some point, so I've done their numbers, but James Madison is certainly the strongest from a resume point of view. Arkansas State was in the lead for the longest time. Mike, there's been a ton of competitive conference tournaments. This might be the number 1 most competitive.
Agree. But I would say this, Sean, watch out for carnage in this one. I think
watch all of these 4 not win it.
I could see Texas State coming out of nowhere and winning this thing. Look, Texas State, they played some teams pretty tight in the out of conference. They narrowly lost on the road against TCU. They also competed at the Myrtle Beach Invitational. They won 2 out of their 3 games there. They only lost to Bradley in that one. So watch out for them. They're on a really good offensive team. So if they can get hot and stay hot, they could knock off all of these teams. But I agree, Sean, that James Madison does seem like the better, the most well put together team going into March. But look out for Texas State and the Bobcats
And
from San Marcos.
this tournament is in Pensacola, Florida, and Mike, it is set up like the other ones with South Alabama and James Madison getting all the way to the semifinals with
Just nonsense.
potentially not. I know we said it was a good idea before, but potentially not for a league this competitive.
Yeah,
Marshall finished one game worse than them, and they have to play potentially 2 extra games to win the tournament by finishing one game worse. So, unfortunate for the Thundering Herd. It would be really cool to see one of these four not win it, but with the way that it's set up, it's very difficult. I'm going with James Madison. They lose their coach and a bunch of their good players after last year's automatic bid. I'm going to say they're going to do it again. All right, West Coast Conference, we're looking at 2 1/8 bids there. There's a chance that San Francisco might be able to get in, but they did lose to Gonzaga at home in a game that they really needed. So we're looking like 2 bids there in the WCC. It is set up like the other ones we mentioned, so it's very likely that it's Gonzaga St. Mary's for the chip. And then we're going to go to the WAC. Also in Las Vegas, like the WCC, we've got Utah Valley and Grand Canyon as the only teams over 500 in this league. Then a ton of teams near 500, and then the Utah schools at the bottom. But Mike, Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew, they made the tournament last year. They ended up going to the round of 32, nearly to the Sweet 16. But it's Utah Valley who wins this league in the regular season. And we might be back to a 2-horse race here.
yeah. I got to go with my coach's little brother and go with the Fighting Bryce Drews from Grand Canyon. Look, they challenged themselves in the out of conference. They actually hosted a home game against Arizona State earlier. I got to watch them early on in the season in Phoenix. They weren't quite able to get the job done, but that game went down to the wire. They also had a nice win against Stanford early on in the season before getting into conference, where they played pretty well for the most part. They just had a couple of slip ups. They lost to Utah Valley early on in the season at home, or excuse me, on the road. They then beat them at home by a lot with their one slip up coming against Cal Baptist. This might be the last season of the WAC with a whole lot of teams leaving the WAC conference. Hopefully, we can send them out with a banger with Utah Valley and Grand Canyon being the best 2 teams. I think both of these teams have a good chance of winning in March as well. We've seen Grand Canyon do it before, and why not have them do it again? I think they can get probably a 13 or 12 seed and get the job done.
Yeah, I like Grand Canyon also. The one thing is Tyan Grant Foster has missed their last 2 games. Now, they do have 2 more regular season games, so I'm not as locked in with the Lopes as probably should be. I'm not sure if he's coming back or not. If he doesn't come back, their ceiling gets significantly lower. But if he does, I mean, we saw them, they were a couple plays away from the Sweet 16 last year. So They're definitely in a better situation resume-wise than Utah Valley. Grand Canyon probably like a solid 13 at this point, and Utah Valley's probably one step below at 14. So, Mike, that is all the automatic bids, minus the Power Conference ones, which we'll get to next week. And just a little bit of a note, there is one less automatic bid this year. No Pac-12.
No Pac-12.
So one more spot on the bubble. And I sort of half figured that out last week when I was doing the at-larges versus the automatic bids. But so one more spot for an at-large team. But, Mike, we went through all the conferences there in just over an hour. Obviously, we could get to more of those. And we're going to try and get to every championship game as they happen here over the next week and a half. But, Mike, we should have a lot of really solid conference tournaments. And as fun as the Power Conference ones are, they really don't mean much compared to these ones where this is their season. Everything that these teams have been doing has been geared towards winning this tournament and getting an automatic bid.
Yeah, at the end of the day, with so many of these teams, even if you had such a great season, like Grand Canyon, like Utah Valley we were just talking about, this all goes away if you lose early in the tournament. It's all for naught if you don't execute coming down the stretch. So it's 4 months of work put into one weekend. It's chaotic. It's exciting. It's terrifying, heartbreaking, all of the emotions that you come with March Madness, and we get to see it a lot early on with these mid-majors.
And that is all we have for you today. But before we go, I'll be bringing back the automatic bid tracker. So every time a bid is clinched, you'll see the list start to populate with the logos next week. And every game is on network TV this year. No ESPN Pluses for the championship game. We've got across the ESPNs, Fox, CBS, and CBS Sports. But still, every game is available to watch if you really want to, even into the preliminary rounds in some of these tournaments. So obviously, some of them have already started. Some teams have 2 regular season games left, but we are 13 days away from Selection Sunday, and we're going to have a ton of videos before, a ton of videos after. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.